Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Midgar Minute, where today we've got more exciting discussions revolving around Final Fantasy VII for you all. But before we get there, Chris, the most amazing co-host in the world, is with us today. Chris, how's it going, dude?
I'm doing very well, Nick. Thank you for asking. How are you doing today?
I'm crushing it, dude. And you know who else is crushing it?
The Mosey Gang.
Let me interrupt you. Not even just the Mosey Gang. We've got a new Mosey Gang.
Oh, yes.
In our friend Tone. Tone, who has reached out to us. We have sent you a link into the Discord, Tone. Do look out for that. Let us know if you got it. Let us know if it works. Come say hi and hang out. But other than this new remarkable individual who's joining us, we also have Scott, Kyle, AJ, Danny, Kevin, Jill, Brianne, Matt, Sam, Charlotte, Cameron, Garrett, Dan M, Ryan Petros, Matt M, Tiles Colton, and again, Tone, to thank. What a list of legends in the Mosey Gang.
It grows ever longer.
It grows ever longer.
But the soul still burns.
The soul, the legend will never die. So listen. We're doing a little Rebirth roundtable today.
Yeah,
There have been a lot of theories floating out there in the FF7 verse, and we figured we'd bring a couple to the surface and talk about them today. Chris, you actually hunted down the two theories we're going to talk about today, so I feel like, with all due respect, you should be the one to introduce them.
Yeah, so, I mean, after our last episode, talking about Sephiroth and Jenova, and, like, what is the deal with them, I was kind of in the mood to do some theory stuff, and I was like, you know what, I haven't, ever since Rebirth has been announced, I haven't really been looking too much at other stuff, because I wanted to wait until we were at a point where we could cover a lot of stuff here, and this is going to be, you know, the first of many of these types of episodes where we're just kind of, you know, scour the internet for, you know, the internet's theories on what the hell's going on in Remake and Rebirth. And, you know, we wanted to, you know, have our first annual, monthly rumor roundup. I guess a rumor roundup.
Let's call it the quarterly rumor roundup. Even if we don't do it quarterly, I just think it sounds good.
Yeah, it does. It kind of rolls off a little bit better, you know? But yeah, so I did some digging around. I was looking for stuff because we know, you know, we will eventually get to. We had talked before about doing like Sleep Easy on over on YouTube has made a like 3-hour long video that we will eventually talk about at some point. And there's some other, you know, Maximilian and some other like bigger names out there. But I felt like, you know what, maybe we should start, you know, with some maybe lesser known people and. You know, because I think they have a lot of fun ideas. But we're going to start with a fellow by the name of Peter Bites over on YouTube. And by the way, we are now uploading these episodes onto YouTube. So if you would like to see these videos, we will have links to the videos that we're talking about in the description. So. But we're going to be talking about Mr. Peter Bites' video here. No way this theory is true. My FF7 Rebirth wishlist and theories, in parentheses, spoilers. Which, you know, it's not really...
And again, we'll have the creator's name in the description, too, if anybody wants to look them up for themselves.
Yes. Peter Bites, with a... that's spelled B-Y-T-E-S. You know, like a
megabyte.
Like a megabyte, exactly. So, and he's brought up, you know, and like kind of like what the title's saying here. It, you know, he talks about a couple different things, but this video was actually what kind of spurred me into wanting to do one of these sorts of, you know, rumor roundup sort of things. Because there's something, I guess, I don't know, should we just go in order of what he brings up in the video?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I think that'd be a good idea. Yeah,
so the first kind of theory that he has, which is something that I have made jokes about on this show before, about if it ends up being this, I would be very upset, but he talks about how maybe we're all in a dream, and that this is all and kind of ties in a little bit maybe to what we were talking about in the last episode with Genova and what the hell's going on, like what there's, and he brings up the Dreamweaver and stuff, and like it's not my favorite theory, but I feel like there's definitely, because there is so much that we don't know. There, like, you can't really sit here and be like, I guess. You can't just be like, oh, that's not what's going on here, I hope it's not.
Well, I'll say what immediately went off in my head is maybe a dream, maybe it's the classic Final Fantasy time loop, but Aerith and Sephiroth kept their memories.
Yes.
Because Final Fantasy has played with that time loop trend, as we've discussed on this podcast, many times through its history. So it's like that whole idea of like a dream or a second lap or a repeat, like there's something to that more sort of ethereal circumstance.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's all I would say.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I don't think it would be something where it is literally like, we're gonna wait, like the third game is gonna end, and then the ending is gonna be Cloud as a kid waking up in Nibelheim and being like, wow, man, what a crazy dream that was.
No, if anything,
what's for dinner, Mom?
If anything, it would be him waking up at the end of Advent Children, and that this whole journey, in a sense, was like that sort of process at the end of Advent Children of him losing the geostigma. Like maybe this is the remake is the process of Cloud's like psyche sort of not only clearing his body of the geostigma, but like sort of like his brain too. I don't know, trying to conceptualize this dream idea in a way that might work. So and that's where my mind went with
and I feel like there is definitely, through watching some of these videos and discovering people's theories, I feel like a lot of them are sort of centered around like what are they doing with Cloud? Like, what is, like, Cloud's mental state is sort of something that I feel like has the most potential in Rebirth and in the third game of, like, they could really explore that instead of just having it be like, oh, he's just blocking out his trauma or whatever, and then he does the whole reunion bit, and that's it, like, because we, even very early on, when we were talking about that scene between him and Sephiroth at the end, at the edge of creation or whatever, and like all the shit that Sephiroth was saying to him, and being like, this, I feel like this is all very important. I just don't know why. And I feel like that's a pretty good summary for this podcast. I feel like there's a lot of our discussions are like, this is important. We just don't know how yet. Which is something that Peter does bring up in this video of like that there's so much stuff that we don't know. But I do like his the next thing that he talks about here is the concept of like, what is Rebirth? Like what does the title Rebirth stand for? Because we know remake is, can be a multiple, like this is a remake, in the game terms, right? But I think that in the much way that Rebirth is going to, I think, talking more about the world itself, I think we kind of almost came to an agreement, I think, at some point that remake stands for, like, this is whatever the timeline or some, like, things are being remade. Like, obviously going further than just, like, the technical term for making a newer version of an older game. You know what I mean? And, instead of it being just like a one-to-one remake, it's like they are literally remaking it. They are redesigning it. They're not just the game itself, excuse me, but the story, some of the characters and the plot threads and things like that. So it's definitely interesting to start thinking about, okay, well, what does Rebirth mean? Does that mean the rebirth of Sephiroth? Does that mean the rebirth of all these other characters that were once dead and are now alive? Like, is it a more literal thing of that, or is it maybe something a little bit more?
Well, I mean, when I hear guys like, I think it was Nomura who said it might be Katase, but I'm pretty sure it was Nomura who was like, oh yeah, players could start with Rebirth, It almost makes me wonder if that's kind of the idea too, where it's like, oh, this is the FF7 that everyone's been waiting for. Not that Remake wasn't, but like we knew from the start Remake was going to be a very contained version of the experience. Like we weren't leaving Midgar. So we knew that some of the game's, biggest features weren't going to be available to us.
Right.
So when I hear Rebirth, sometimes when I try to think of it from that fourth wall perspective, I think of the idea that like this is them sort of like, this is not that Remake isn't the remake, but Rebirth is the real vision.
Right. And
I think that's why they're telling you can start there if you'd like.
Yeah, because what I feel like, based on Remake and all the things that we've heard, like the devs say up until this point, is that it does feel like Remake is sort of just like, all right, this is us cleaning the slate for what is to come next, right? And sort of be like, not necessarily trick us into like a certain I feel like it could be interpreted that way.
Dude,
of like
the whispers were in the trailer. Barrett getting stabbed was in the trailer. I don't understand anyone. I'm sorry. I apologize. If you saw that trailer, you had to know that something was up.
Something was going on. Yeah. Which I still don't know why. Why, whoever was in charge of editing that trailer was like, yeah, let's put this stuff in, because then people be like, what? I mean, that's probably
honestly,
why.
I think it was to cover themselves. To cover themselves. So it's like, hey, you made it look like it was going to be the same game, but when I bought it, it was different. It's like they can easily now, just be like, no,
now they have
the trailer, we let you know.
Plausible deniability, right? Where they're just like, no, I mean, we put that Barrett getting stabbed in the trailer, and that didn't happen in the original.
Yeah, and the whispers.
Yeah, and all that stuff. Yeah, I'm very curious as to like what their process was for that.
They let you play the demo. They let you play the demo where you could see already things were changing.
Right. Yeah, and it wasn't just immediately. And and it's one of those things where I was going through most of Remake. I had that sort of understanding that like things will be different, but just at that time it was more like, okay, they're making the most of this opportunity, because it's not, like kind of like what we were saying on the very first episode, where we're like, we want this to be something different. We want to see them take different directions, but it was sort of unclear for a little while of like how far that was going to go. And then of course, as time went on, you're like, I don't know. And then of course at the very end, you're like, oh, they're just, okay, we're just completely, we don't know anymore anything. And that we've been in that state for the last 2 years. So, we'll continue to be for at least another year.
Oh yeah.
But I wonder, coming back to Peter's video here, just the concept of Rebirth. I think, I want to say, because after our discussion last time, and a lot of other, me thinking behind the scenes here, Sephiroth, I think it's probably more closely related to Sephiroth, or I don't know. I feel like whenever I say that,
I feel like it'll be a multitude of things again. I think it'll definitely
it'll be a multi-meaning
like you're saying.
Sort of thing. Yeah, it's not necessarily representative of one specific thing, because depending on how far they go in Rebirth, like, are we gonna get to reunion, like the reunion? Like, is that there's another video that we will talk about at a later date that posits a good theory about what the ending of Rebirth is going to be, but I will save that for that time. But the thing that the part when I was watching this video where I was like, I want to bring this up because it closely relates to what we talked about last time, and it's Aerith's fate. And we've talked before about I think we're both of the mind that Aerith has to die, right? Because that is, as Maximilian put it, is the emotional core of FF7 as a game, as a story, right? But Mr. Peter Bites here says something very interesting, And when we take into consideration, because when I was hearing all this, my first thought was thinking back to when you were like, why didn't Sephiroth kill Aerith at the very beginning of the game? Like, he totally could have. And you're correct. If he was there, we still don't know. I still am like, I'm not entirely convinced that he was physically there in that moment.
But there was that physical touch, though. That's what's strange to me. But you're right. They could pull anime bullshit.
Right, and then
forget I said anything.
Yeah, he goes into the idea that Aerith may not die at the City of the Ancients, but may die later on in the story, because we've talked about one of the most things that we've talked about on this podcast. I feel like over the entire runtime of it is that. What does the fucking 7 seconds line mean? And yeah. I love that the community immediately was like, oh yeah, that 7 seconds was how long it took Sephiroth to kill Aerith in the original, like fall from the sky and stab her. And I'm like, that's, and that was something that was like the most frequent thing that I saw, like right after that game came out and everyone had finished it and played through it.
My only problem, and maybe I'm wrong, but it's like, wouldn't you have to be pretty choosy about when you start counting?
I guess
like, so. Is it from the very frame Sephiroth appears, or is it from the time where his full body is on the screen? I don't know.
Yeah, I think there maybe is some leeway there. The clips that I have seen have all just kind of, it's like, I don't think it was 7 seconds exactly on the nose, but it was close enough to where you're like, okay.
If it hovers around, hey, listen, I live on crackpot theory, so that's good enough for me.
But the thing that got me thinking was, because Peter Bites brings up in here that, oh well, we were wondering about like what is Sephiroth doing? Like what is he doing in this new story? What is his deal? Why does he, why is he sort of insinuating to Cloud that he wants, well, maybe not that he wants, or that he, is saying like, hey, maybe you should save her this time, and I'm thinking, okay, well, because I thought about that too, of like he's trying to, bend, he's trying to whatever Sephiroth is up to. I believe that at the very core of it, at least, he's trying to redo the events of OG, right, and the subsequent compilation stuff.
I want to know what the control in his experiment is, right? He's trying to redo these events, but it's like, all right, what exactly is he trying to shift?
Well, I think because he, it's brought up in this video that, if Aerith was alive, she wouldn't be able to cast Holy. If she didn't merge with the live stream, she couldn't fully cast Holy, right? So, if maybe in Sephiroth's eyes, if Aerith is alive, that means that he can win, because, if she's dead, and original Sephiroth may not have known that. I mean, I don't know how he could have, but you know what I mean. Like, if this is the Sephiroth that is, has all the information. Like, we think that Aerith also has all the information, and maybe Cloud as well. Or, maybe anybody connected to the live stream has this thing, and the reason that we're only seeing it with these three characters who have a connection to the live stream. But the thing that was interesting the most to me is like, oh, well, yeah, that makes sense to me. That, maybe if this is Sephiroth trying to, rewrite history and or make a certain conditions to where he can, achieve his goal, whatever that goal may be. But I'm assuming it's to cast Meteor and to, ride the galaxy as the planet is vessel, blah 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 blah. That whole spiel, which I'm like, it makes sense. But at the same time, it kind of doesn't, because, and even Peter brings it up here, is like, why would that be the thing? And kind of like what you were alluding to before, of like, what conditions is Sephiroth trying to create here? Like, what is he trying?
What's the control?
Yeah.
What is it that he needs to quote unquote fix?
Yeah, and I'm wondering because if
obviously he needs to not die, but like
right.
Exactly
like he needs the black materia, and he needs, and as Peter puts in here, he needs the reunion to happen, and he needs Aerith to maybe not be dead. Because we don't know if Aerith, if she was alive, if she could do it, because we never, she dies. So, like, we just assume maybe that she wouldn't be able to cast Holy fully. But, I don't know. Again, we just don't have enough information, and it drives me fucking crazy, because I'm like, this seems like a really cool idea, and would explain some things, and would be I think a cool... I hate to use the term.
I got a potential brain blast moment.
Okay.
God, but it's so funny. I always get tangled up in my brain thinking this shit over.
Mm-hmm.
So
welcome to my life.
So you remember in I forget exactly what chapter it is, but it's the chapter where we go to rob Jesse's house. As Cloud, we go with Avalanche in Remake.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when you're walking with Biggs and Wedge, and Biggs tells you all about Jesse's theory that her dad is trapped in between like the planet and the life stream.
Right.
Like the soul is trapped. Maybe
he's in a
Sephiroth's creating these conditions. Maybe Sephiroth's creating these conditions that trap people there, because now he can kill Aerith, and since she's trapped just like Jesse's dad, she can't cast Holy.
Interesting.
Listen, it's peculiar that they bring up this whole thing with Jesse's dad. Like, that whole thing about being trapped and not being able to enter the live stream, that's coming back.
Because at this point, if there's anything that we know for certain, is that things, no matter how ubiquitous they may seem at the time, are definitely like, no, we're kind of like it. I guarantee you're probably 100% right that like that's going to come back into the story somehow later on. I just don't know how yet, but I'm it's very, and is it also maybe tied into his clones in some way, because I feel like, well, I mean, they're just kind of empty husks, really. They're not, not really between living and, dying. I think they're literally just like, hey, we're just these Mako-filled skeletons walking around in robes that can be used as, sort of conduits for whatever the live stream, because I'm assuming, after our discussion last time, that like Sephiroth is, fused with the live stream now, and that is just, he and Genova or whatever are kind of like how Aerith is at the end of OG, and I guess more specifically Advent Children, and then Zack makes his way there too, which I always thought was kind of funny, but also really, like, I teared up when I saw that the first time, but I always like that whole scene in Advent Children. He's like, I'm here too. Yeah, I've never been mentioned this entire movie, but like, hey guys, I'm here too. But yeah, because that's the thing, like, we don't know to what extent, like, because we know the live stream, is the planet, and is also the thing that, is like the river of souls, right? The whole thing of like, okay, you return to the planet, yeah. There are other sort of things involved in the sequence here that I am hoping that they'll dive more into, because I don't have a photographic memory of everything in OG. Maybe they had discussed some of that stuff there, maybe when we're talking the Bugenhagen, but not that I can remember off the top of my head. That's why I feel like they have so much of an opportunity here to re-examine a lot of these things, and even bringing things over like the cellular degradation with soldiers and things like that. That I feel like is something that, that just recontextualizes a lot of stuff. Just having that, and having that, kind of be tied to Crisis Core for the longest time is like been like, oh, okay, well, that was very pertinent to that game's plot, and that's pretty much it. Like, we didn't really see it, even in the other pieces of the compilation that came out after Crisis Core, we didn't really see any of that stuff there. But yeah, I mean, I totally think that there's a lot of room there for interpretation, and once we sort of get a better idea of like, is this a live stream thing? Well, it's definitely a live stream thing. That much I can say for certain. I just don't know how how the where exactly the pieces fit in. But Sephiroth sort of rewriting history to make sure that he can ensure his victory this time around, which I still am not, because when I start thinking about that, it's like, okay, and we talked about it last time too, of like, well, what does Zack, did he know that he, through doing this, that he was going to bring Zack back, and that these other characters that were supposed to die are now alive?
I always wonder if bringing Zack back was actually Sephiroth's doing when he absorbed
right. That's why I'm like, I don't know, like, because that, if it was, like, I don't see how, unless he brings Zack back so that because in case, maybe as like a backup plan in case he can't break Cloud's mind, doing all this other stuff. What would break Cloud's mind more than seeing Zack in the flesh in front of him, which I believe another video that we're going to talk about kind of goes into that a little bit. But anyways, I like the idea that Aerith not dying is the thing. That, like, if that is the whole crux, because we've talked about, said before, even earlier in this episode, that her death is like so crucial and is sort of the thing that is was propelling the plot, I think, or the latter half of the plot at least, and was like the whole thing of her sacrifice was what was able to save the planet, quote unquote, even though it's not really like, I mean, it's kind of saved, and then fucking Yoo-Hoo and whatever Yasu and all those other guys came around like, nah, we're gonna make it a little bit worse, and here's also this Geostigma, so it didn't really work. But then they ultimately did, I guess, technically, because we don't know. Well, Dirge, I don't want to think about Dirge when I'm talking about like any of this, like anything in regards to this, because I feel like the Dirge storyline is so disconnected from the overall plot of FF7, like in definitely more ways than one, because I feel like it doesn't really attach itself to any of this stuff, because we at the end of Advent Children, like, this stuff was the definitive end of the FF7 storyline, or so we thought, because here we are again after all these years, and they're continuing it. Big, you can't see me doing it, but I'm doing big air quotes when I say that.
Big air quotes.
big.
Got it.
I grew my fingers to make them bigger, the air quotes bigger. But yeah, no, I don't want to go on a whole tirade about Dirge. My feelings on Dirge. Everyone knows my feelings on Dirge and how weird it is.
It's on file.
It is on file if you ever want to go listen.
Just scroll down.
But anyways, I guess we should probably get back on track here with Peter's video. Yeah, I think the whole thing of him potentially trying to steer Cloud into saving Aerith, and that maybe in Sephiroth's mind that is what it is. Like, maybe it is just as simple as that. Is like, well, if Aerith's alive, at least until the point, because like if she's alive beforehand, right? Like, if she was alive, maybe even up to the point where he gets the black materia, maybe at that point, as long as she's not fully connected and melded with the live stream like he is now, but I think Aerith is a lot more connected in Remake than in OG, even after her death. Yeah. Because if the theory of that this is a completed if this is like a continuation of the story and basically like a do-over, but everyone sort of knows. Like, and I was reminded of that affinity scene with Aerith in Remake, and how that whole thing is like, that was the biggest, like we had the little hints that Aerith kind of knows what's going on, or at least like maybe not directly, but even a little bit, like she knows something is up, right? And then that was the scene that was kind of like, oh no, you definitely know shit, and you're just not telling us anything. I mean, there's shit. There's even that line of Tifa like, "Hey, Aerith, what are you not telling me?"
She says it. She says it twice. She might even say it 3 times.
Yeah, and it's definitely something where it's like, would Aerith?
So if like Tifa must look at like Cloud and Barrett and be like, "Do you guys not know she's just straight up fucking lying?"
Like, I don't know. I don't ask questions. If it doesn't have to do with Marlene, I don't care. Or taking down Shinra, I don't care. But basically what I'm trying to get at is that, is Remake Aerith like potentially stronger than Advent Children Aerith, or what she would be like at that point? Or I guess technically, to bring it down even more, to like FF7, like OG Aerith.
I would say so. I think it's one of the reasons on purpose they made her so overpowered in Remake.
Right, yeah. They had to bleed through the mechanics. Yeah, and I feel like it's definitely, there are too many things that have lined up in a certain way that where I'm like, I can't not see it, Yeah. And there's so many things that are pointing to that. And then, Sephiroth being this weird, like, ethereal, omnipotent force, kind of just doing whatever the fuck he wants. And then, Cloud getting visions of the future, and, things, from, Aerith's death to the plate falling, there's so many things there that are, just, it's too convenient, I think. It's like, it's too close to be like, there's something, like, I don't think this is a, I mean, we kind of came to the agreement that this was a, this was Sephiroth and Jenova hitting the reset button, right? Or maybe Aerith doing that, or or the planet doing it. Like, somebody somewhere hit a restart button, and then now you have these 3 characters of Cloud, Sephiroth, and Aerith having some sort of, and maybe because of their connection to the live stream, that is why they are the ones, at least that we've seen so far. Even though, I mean, this might, even those, who knows, maybe this ties into the Roche theory also of like, because he is, technically he's a soldier too, so he would, have this sort of, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of.
No, you're good.
Because,
dude. No, I think
because if Zack's a soldier too, and he has the Jenova cells in him, so maybe that's how he's alive. Because whatever happened with, whatever happened to get us to this point before we saw him, come back to life. And then, obviously the Whispers getting gobbled up by Sephiroth obviously had something to do with it, but I feel like, maybe I'm getting a little too hung up on the live stream thing and like the Mako stuff, but it's definitely interesting to me that we've only ever seen this happen with these characters that are connected to the live stream in some way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because if not for the only thing that really kind of throws a wrench in the works for me is that when they are when everyone sees Sephiroth when we're standing next to Jenova. And then it's like, okay, well, now Tifa and Barrett and Red see him. And it's like, well, these guys aren't as directly connected to the live stream as these other characters. So that's the only thing that kind of makes me second guess that sort of approach, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interest. It's something that, like, one thing I like that we're doing this is that it's going to bring us in so many other directions that I hadn't even considered before, you know? And that's the most exciting part to me. But I guess we all sorry to Peter Bites. We should get back to his video. And yeah, that it being, and like I said, if anyone wants to watch these videos, and because we're going to butcher them and trail off into all these other things, so definitely go check out their original videos. And we but with that said, he kind of then goes into talking about the open world stuff and how, you know, that stuff should sort of work, and that maybe, you know, it won't be like we won't be traveling everywhere from the get-go. And, like, I mean, technically we could, you know, because if we go to Junon, you know, we could go there and do all that stuff. But I feel like, I don't know, and we've talked about, like, the open world stuff before. And it's very, like, there's so many different ways that they could take it. Like, if things are going to go very similar to how they went before, it's like we're not going to meet Sid and get the High Wind for a while, you know?
Yeah. So,
I mean, I guess, you know, but we, you know who we're going to see a lot faster than that, and we technically have already seen, is Chocobo Bill. And one of my favorite mechanics from FF15 was riding Chocobos around. And I would love to, if that was...
It would be a crime. It would be an absolute crime.
If that was...
If we don't get to do that.
Like, if I can't give Barrett his own Chocobo to ride around, I think that would be a crime. That would be a capital offense, some might say. And by some, I mean me.
Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's definitely... a lot of potential there, and I wonder if I wonder how they will implement that stuff. Because there is so much that we don't know, and that's the worst part about all these having all these theories and racking our brains, is that it's like we just don't know. We don't know a goddamn thing about anything.
Nope.
But we'll come back to that, because I think he does come back to that at another point. But one thing that I feel like we never really touched upon, Rufus, and like what is his deal? Like, why can he see the whispers? Because that, I feel like, was also a very deliberate thing of like, He could clearly see it, and Sung can't see it. So Sung hasn't done anything yet. And as Peter reiterates here, is that you can only see the whispers if you have come into contact with them, and then you'll see them again after that if you are doing something to change your fate, right? Or I guess, well, your fate, and then I guess the fate of the world, I guess, technically. And it's something that I had not really thought too much about, I guess because there was so much other stuff going on at the game at that point in time. But I think it is interesting that during that scene of you seeing when Rufus is like noticing them, they are completely surrounding Shinra Tower. And I never really thought about what that means. You know, because the whispers, the way that we've seen them act up until that point is like they surround the thing that is about to be in danger of being changed, right? So what does that mean? You know, I'm sitting here, when I watched this video the first time, I was like, I had not even considered.
It might have been about boxing Rufus in. Keeping Rufus.
Well, yeah,
I
guess maybe because
he's one of the ones that could see him, right?
Yeah, Rufus could potentially. I guess maybe he could have gone after Cloud and the gang after the fact, but I don't know. I do. Peter does bring up in here that potentially Rufus had maybe done something like very big off screen that we don't know about yet, and that's why because what triggered the whispers to appear to him is like the only thing. I mean, I guess I'm trying to think because we don't. I mean, with Rufus, it's so weird because he literally just like shows up for a boss fight and then dips out and that's it. Like he doesn't really hang around. We don't really see him do a lot. So it's kind of hard to glean exactly what could have happened because seemingly from what we have seen so far, everything has gone to the original plan, right? President Shinra died and now he is going to be the next leader of Shinra. But, maybe it has something to do with our good old pals from the deep ground.
I was about to say, they could talk about what's different from the original, right?
Yeah, so because now that we know that Shinra not only, obviously they know about deep ground, but they're, we saw Scarlet talking to Nero, like, as if they have, at least are like on a sort of, they know them and they are like obviously sort of their subjects, I guess, or, they're the, they're under their control, quote unquote, even though that very much doesn't seem to be the case by the end of the DLC. And they just seem to be sort of playing along until something happens. So, and, we know that Rufus, is a conniving bastard. As much as I do end up liking where his character goes by the end of everything, after, us just finishing Before Crisis, I feel like we did get a little bit more, even though he wasn't, like, heavily featured in that game. At least, it's not as much as I would have liked, excuse me. But at this point in Rufus's arc as a character, I could see maybe him using, and as I believe Peter brings up here, is that maybe when we go back to Midgar, like the siege on Midgar at the end, maybe Shinra is going to be extra buff and not completely useless this time around, fighting the weapons and everything. So that's what I feel like. What have I been saying?
I would enjoy that.
It's like, what have I been saying about ever since they included Deep Ground into Remake already? Like, what if they actually just, like, teamed up? I mean, maybe, or to some extent...
Well, I mean, that's kind of where we end up at the end of the day, right? Like, when you think about Advent Children, Rune and Reno were very much on our side. You had a Rufus that was trying to redeem himself for the sins of the past. So it's very possible that Rufus... if you think about the people whose fates, could use a change, Rufus, he ends up literally, disabled in a wheelchair, just completely remorseful for all his sins. It's not crazy to think that he would be one of the ones that would not only change his fate, but have an interest in it.
Yeah, and I think that, this, like I was saying, this version, or, this Rufus at this point in time, if... with Deep Ground being in the picture from the very beginning, he would absolutely... Because, hey, he has the Turks under his thumb already, right? And we know that.
Yep.
So, of course, now that he is the new king of Shinra, wouldn't it be in his best interest to use all these things that, I'm assuming that because obviously President Shinra didn't want to, do anything with Deep Ground, right? Or he's like, they're just chilling down there. Uploading Vice to the metaverse or whatever, turning Vice into an NFT. But I think that, there is the potential that Rufus will now use Deep Ground as just another arm of Shinra and not just have them be these, castaways that are chilling underneath the basement, you know what I mean? And I think that would be really fucking cool because that means Deep Ground actually has a purpose other than being just, hey, we're the bad guys for now.
Yeah.
Where have we been? We've been here the whole time. You just didn't know about it because no one said anything. But yeah, I think that's just me just being really hopeful that they, as much as I don't like Dirge, I think Deep Ground and Vice and all, even Azul, like they could have been good. Like they have the potential. The thing that disappointed me the most about Dirge was like, man, these guys had potential, but they just had nothing to do in Dirge. Because they were like, we're, 95% of that game is exploring Vincent and his, and Lucrezia and all that stuff, which, totally fine. But Deep Ground, and that was my biggest complaint about Deep Ground, is that they just felt like they were there because we needed some dudes to shoot. And that was it, And it felt like, I'm like, I want there to be, I want to think of Deep Ground, like, because the Turks... you could argue that it was the same thing. Well, maybe before Crisis made it seem like that a little bit more than any of the other stuff that we've seen Turks in, but because there were all the other ones that we weren't even aware that existed, and who knows, maybe they'll come back and not. I mean, at the very least, Cisne will definitely. I'm locking it in right now. Cisne will return. It would be awesome if Shotgun and the others eventually show up as well, or at the maybe Verdot, like we were talking about at the finale episode of like, man, it'd be really cool to see Verdot again. And at this point, technically, well, I was gonna say he would be dead. Well, no, he wouldn't be, because he was alive the whole time, right?
Yeah, boy, that ended.
Sorry, I just reminded myself of the ending of Before Crisis and got very sad. Go listen to that episode to hear more about that. But yeah, and I was gonna say, maybe he also got brought back because this whole thing. I feel like we should move past it, but I'm not entirely done with the idea of like Sephiroth doing this whole spiel, and Zack and Biggs and Jesse surviving is just like collateral damage, right? Or not damage, but it's kind of like a unintended consequence of Sephiroth's actions.
Shit. Dude, honestly, you just kind of blew my mind. Very off tangent.
Mm-hmm.
So you remember when what's her name, Kyrie is giving like this fucking like street news on the street corner.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, they don't care about collateral damage. Makes you wonder, like, what was the collateral damage of killing Fate?
Right. And that's the thing. That's one of the many things, but like kind of the big main thing that I feel like is the thing that I want to know. Like obviously Zack is alive, and that's huge, and Biggs and Jesse are seemingly alive as well. And it's like, well, I love how they end it right at that point where like they give you that tiny little bit of stuff, but then now it's like, all right, well, we don't like what is the butterfly effect here? Like what is going on? And that's the most frustrating thing to me. It's just like I want just a little bit, just a little tiny something. But yeah, no, I definitely think that with Rebirth, we are definitely going to see the collateral damage of killing Fate, and I think it definitely goes way beyond Zack being alive. Even though that for a lot of people is kind of like the biggest thing of like, and we'll get into more Zack stuff.
Yeah.
But I do think that to bring it back to Rufus real quick, it is something that I think is also... Because I feel like Rufus was another character that just... he kind of just came across as an annoying dickhead in OG, of just like, oh, you're just like a crazy... you just want to have everyone... You want to throw parades, you want to do all this stuff. Granted, he was, wanted to go in a different direction from President Shinra, but at the same time, he didn't really get to accomplish all that much,
Yeah.
because the fucking weapons came out.
He kind of took over on the eve of an apocalypse.
Right, yeah. He came into power like at the worst possible time, where he's like, all right, guys, you know, he's rubbing his hands together. He's like, oh, man, I got so many things. My fucking 4-year plan is so fucking... You guys, you wait. And then, oh, yeah, yeah, the apocalypse is happening. Great. Well, there goes my, plate rebuild, my plate rebuilding. Who knows? Maybe Rufus was going to do a bunch of cool stuff, and we just never got to see it because, the end of the world was happening. And maybe.
Oh yeah, he's gonna build the fucking Midgar Ferris wheel.
Yeah.
In Walmart.
Yeah, the tilt-a-whirl in yeah, he's gonna have Fast Pass. He's gonna introduce Fast Pass into Walmart. A lot of big plans, but I mean, I don't know. I think there's a lot of Rufus is one of those characters that is just absolutely brewing with potential in this new narrative, and I can't wait. I cannot wait. I literally cannot wait to see what Rufus does here. And also another thing that I am absolutely excited for them to explore is Wu-Tai, which is the next part of Mr. Bytes' video here. I literally almost said Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast.
Mr. Beast.
Well-known Final Fantasy VII fan, Mr. Beast. But I mean, obviously with Yuffie being obviously a little bit more integral to the story, or will actually be a part of the story instead of kind of like Wu-Tai itself was also very optional in OG. You could totally not, there are people out there who played FF7 back in the day and just didn't even know who Yuffie was. They're like, who? Oh, that random NPC that stole all my shit in the forest?
Wait, she could join the
party? It's like, I remember hearing about Yuffie back then and being like, wait, what? Like that, huh? Because I remember seeing like pictures of her and I'm like, who is this person? I don't know who this person is. And I would see like...
Yeah, Vincent's a lot easier to find than Yuffie is.
Yeah, and it's a lot, something that, it makes me super excited to see what they do with Vincent too, because obviously with the Dirge and stuff and all the... Like, there is stuff there to tell for Vincent, but due to Yuffie and Vincent being optional characters, I'm sure that they didn't really like want to commit too much and have them be like real characters, really, because if you could miss them entirely and not know about them at all. They don't want to have an entire character with a big ass, you know what I mean? Like, it just seems like a lot of stuff that they probably didn't want to put in because they're like, oh well, there's a potential that a good portion of the player base will not even see any of this content. So, maybe not. But with all this stuff that we have going on now, they have a chance to reintroduce. I mean, Wu-Tai has been... I was thoroughly surprised how much Wu-Tai was brought up in Remake, even before Yuffie came into the picture.
Oh, yeah.
And how they're sort of setting Wu-Tai up to be like this big, important... faction in whatever the hell's going on. I mean, obviously, Shinra using it as like, they're just they are the enemy and no one trusts Wu-Tai and, and I like that they explored that from the opposite direction with Yuffie of being like, oh, you guys from Midgar are all fucking weird and your place stinks and you're all just like closed-minded assholes and it turns out that Yuffie was the closed-minded asshole, but she will learn to love again. Mr. I'm just gonna call you Peter. Peter. I'm not gonna do Mr. Byte because I just want to say Mr.
Bytes.
He brings up that it would be cool to see. Because we didn't really... The only real... Aside from OG, like, the only other time that we see Wu-Tai is in Crisis Core. He did bring up that, it might be cool to see maybe if there were flashbacks to the war and we get to explore the war the Great Wu-Tai War a little bit, and see maybe Elmira's husband that was mentioned in Remake. You know, maybe like I don't think he needs to be like a full-on character or anything, but like, you know, if we get flashbacks of the war and we see a guy who, you know, maybe has like a picture of her or something, you know, we maybe don't even have to see the guy's face, you know, but that'd be like, oh, that's like a cool little detail that maybe, you know, cool little like, you know, like like the Kunsel effect of like, you know, maybe we'll never actually see Kunsel, but the fact that they mentioned him is enough, you know.
Yeah.
Although I hope we get to see Kunsel. I hope he comes back.
I'm sure he will, dude.
What is he do? What's he been doing all this time? Maybe he's the one. Maybe he's talking. Maybe he's plotting shit with Rufus. Maybe Kunzel's maybe Kunzel's a double agent. And he was. Well, no, I think Chadley's the real double agent. But we've done episodes on Chadley. We've done our
deep dive on Chadley, yeah, dude.
And I am
a little sicko.
I still feel like that Chadley's gonna be super important going on in ways like with everything else, in ways that we don't know yet. But yeah, I think Wu-Tai deserves a little bit of fleshing out. Based on the stuff that we saw a little bit in Wall Market, you know, because it's, you know, Don Corneo is a weeb and designed his mansion and stuff and sections of Wall Market around Wu-Tai. I would love to see like what Wu-Tai like just physically looks like and what their representation of it is in this new engine and stuff, because I guarantee it would look fucking beautiful.
Incredible, yeah.
Like at the very least, even if there isn't a lot of, I mean, there will be, I'm sure Wu-Tai, instead of being an optional place that you go to, will kind of be a place where a lot of story stuff will happen, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, now that we'll guarantee pretty much that Yuffie's going to be in the party, like, we will go there at some point, and there will be stuff. We'll you know, maybe we'll see Yuffie's drunk deadbeat dad. And then she'll have her.
Well, he's in prison,
yeah.
Which is like another thing that differentiates from the original.
Yeah, and I think, you know, with them sort of alluding to, you know, Avalanche's ties with Wu-Tai and Wu-Tai's, that you know, they're definitely setting up Wu-Tai to be something that is more than just an optional place you can go to. You know?
Oh, yeah.
And with the fact that there is the greater Avalanche still exists in some form, which, you know, is something that, you know, I was too sort of distracted by the end of Before Crisis to really think about it, but that is interesting to me, because there really wasn't, like, by the end of Before Crisis, like, Avalanche kind of didn't exist anymore, or at least not like that structure. You know, because like all the leadership, at least that we knew of, just wasn't there anymore. I mean, did Elfie survive? I don't think did she? Did they ever say? Did they even say if Elfie lived or not? I don't think she did.
No, I don't think she did either.
Yeah, I don't know if they explicitly mentioned it or not. Which is
no. I think she's in that final shot.
Is she?
I'll fact check that.
Fact check that because I'm just thinking of like, man, shot. I wonder if like, did they really just do that whole thing and just be like, not even like poor Elfie? If that was the case, where it's like, oh, she's dead, but Verdot's alive, so you know, because Verdot
is it the epilogue or is it chapter 24?
It is the epilogue. It's one of the the final scenes of the game.
Let's check this.
This is very, very crucial. Everybody, hold on.
I think I got it.
We need to know, because I don't remember. As soon as we finished that episode, I blocked that Before Crisis out of my memory, pretty much.
Okay, I'm looking. All the Turks are there.
Yeah, because I know all the Turks were there.
Verdot. Let's see. Doesn't look like anything is explicitly said.
Yeah, because Verdot, I don't think Verdot... Well, Verdot doesn't say anything, but I wonder...
He says, "What's the matter, Chief? Hurry up and give us our orders."
Yeah.
That's what he says.
So, anyways...
No mention of Alfie.
Yeah, so Avalanche, as we know it, or at least as we knew it in Before Crisis, didn't really... doesn't really exist anymore. But we know that there is a proper Avalanche out there still, through that, the chapter where we are on the upper plate, and then, we're with Nio and what was that? Billy Bob and Polk, those guys. Even though I still think something's up with those guys too. I'm still like, even seeing just the little bit of Avalanche that we saw in Remake, I'm not entirely convinced that there is a proper, like, at this point, I mean, if Avalanche did exist, it probably is just a bunch of Splinter Cells,
At this point, yeah.
That kind of like, yeah, hey guys, our leadership just completely crumbled, and I mean, I'm sure there's probably maybe some, there's like more factions than just like, oh, we have the main Avalanche force and then Barrett's group off to the side, and then,
Yeah.
I think, there's a little more. And then, of course, fucking Zhija, or whatever. Was that his name? Zhija?
Zhija. Yep, Zhija.
Which that motherfucker's definitely coming back at some point. And
Sus as hell,
something's going on with that boy. But anyways, yeah, I think Wutai is definitely ripe for stuff, and I think we will absolutely be heading there, and there will definitely be some more stuff there. But just to continue on with Peter's video here, he kind of talks, a little bit more about the open world stuff, and how it kind of like what we're talking about. Of we hope that it's not just like every other open world game where it's like, oh hey, go here and do this side mission for, go and collect me 10 cactar spines or something, come back and I'll give you an elixir. Yeah, I hope if they're like, obviously the open world stuff will be there, but I don't think, or at least I don't hope that it'll be, like, hopefully there, I could totally see them doing stuff like that. Like, you have these little, like, side things that you can do, like caves and things like that, like we discussed, but I don't think it'll be like Assassin's Creed, right? Where it's just like, here's this, hey, climb this tower and reveal more sections of the map, that whole sort of thing.
Yeah.
Or at least I hope not, because I feel like there's definitely room there for that formula to be tampered with and improved upon, and if they do end up doing that, it will feel very lazy, and I hope it's not. And as Peter talks about here, that the original FF7 had great side content, like the golden saucer stuff, and the chocobo breeding, and I mean, hell, even everyone makes jokes about it, but that snowboarding minigame was pretty cool, even though I don't think we would we, because that was after Aerith's death, right? That you could do that, or am I?
Yes. No, you do the snowboarding after Aerith.
Yeah. I distinctly remember of like,
it took me a second, but yes.
Like, my girlfriend died. I better go fucking, go rip this powder, yo. I'm not a snowboarder, so I don't know what they say. I think
it's shred.
I'm gonna shred that. Gonna shred that snow, dude.
There you go.
I'm gonna snort that powder. What? But yes, going. I do like that he also sort of goes into the stuff that we talked about last episode about what is Jenova's deal, what's going on. Because Jenova obviously is going to be taking a much more present, presence in the spotlight, I guess.
I would say so. Because
it is becoming increasingly prevalent that, Jenova's not just, this I mean, I feel bad saying it, but sort of like a plot device in OG a little bit, and is now becoming something a little bit more. And I don't know. Again, I don't want to retread too much of our conversation from last time, but if you want to know our thoughts about Jenova and what's going on there, please, I implore you to listen to that episode. So I won't really talk about it too much here. But he does bring up a interesting idea of Jenova maybe using, because we were talking about how, she or it might be using, Sephiroth as a sort of puppet, right? Or a sort of a thing that is like, oh, this, I'm going to show this, as like him being like an imposter almost, as he puts it. And that maybe that there could be potentially other characters,
Jenova imposters lingering around. Yeah, right. Yeah, that was cool.
And I'm like, yeah, that's a really interesting concept, because I'm thinking like there's a lot of fun stuff you could do with that. Especially if, it's like, like these characters that we think that are alive, like, are they really? or are they images? I feel like, there is definitely, especially if Sephiroth / Jenova wants to break Cloud's mind, there's so many things like, hey, we could just show you your mom, or, maybe Zack or whoever, you know what I mean? Like there's a lot of, I feel like there's a lot of room there to play around with.
I would say so.
And I think that was something that was, when he brought that up, I was like, huh, okay. And I think we will see, and he does bring up, like, oh, it'd be cool to see the battle that, Jenova fighting the Cetra and all that stuff. And I'm like, yeah, that, that, again, that's another stuff. I'm surprised that we didn't talk about it last time, but that's something that I'm like, yeah, we didn't really see any of that stuff. We only really kind of hear about it. And that would, this would be another great chance to, see that stuff that we, would be like, oh, we just heard whispers and murmurs about this stuff. And like, no, we can actually kind of see it now. And I guess really I just to because we do have another video that we want to talk about. Sorry, Peter, and I implore everyone to go watch Peter's video. He kind of talks about, exploring characters a little bit deeper, which, is something that I think we both have been pretty vocal about on this show many a time, that it's been great to see them explore these characters a lot more, and the fact that there are so many characters, and even brings up, Kate Sith, and, it's like, yeah, as much as I'm sort of like, for lack of a better word, disgusted by Kate Sith as a being, I would like for them, kind of like how I was playing around with the idea of like, oh, I would love for them to make me not dislike Azul, like I want to like these characters. I don't want to hate any of these characters, because I think when I really think about the whole entire cast of FF7, like there are very few characters that I just don't like, like there's some that there's some that I like more than others, but there's not very many of them that I'm like, I just hate this person or this character, I mean, except like I didn't like Kate Sith because I just thought he was a weirdo, and then like I like the idea of him being sort of a means for Reeve to be like a double agent, right, and all that stuff, and sacrificed him for the black materia, whatever. That whole thing, I was like, I didn't feel anything when that happened in the original game, because I was like, I never had you in my party. You were just kind of there, and like with the big reveal that he was, Reeve in disguise, it was like, I mean, that's interesting, and actually, to be fair, the stuff that as Reeve became more of an actual character later on in like Dirge and stuff, I'm like, okay, there's definitely room for improvement there. And I think from the stuff that we've seen from the other characters so far, and especially even from the ones that we know a lot about, and the stuff that we've seen with them so far, you know, I feel like they could do that literally for every character, every major character in this game. And I mean, shit, even Johnny, who was not even like a main character, or even, I wouldn't even call him like a side character. He was just like in OG, I mean, you know, he was just, hey, I'm that guy with the sunglasses and the pink hair that walks with his hands in his pockets, and you know, that was just that. I don't even think he had a name. Did he? I don't think he was called Johnny in OG. I could be wrong about that. But I don't know. I don't think he was ever explicitly referenced as Johnny. But like the fact that they made that guy an actual like legitimate side character, that I'm like, I mean, Johnny's not a likable character, but you know, you know, I feel like I can't help but feel for him, you know, because he's just, you know, he's obviously not the smartest person in the room. He ain't the sharpest tool in the shed, you might say, but you know, he's got that you know, like a I was almost gonna say like a puppy, but no, I don't want to take that title away from Zach. You know, he's just like that lovable oaf. You know, you're like, oh, Johnny.
He's the village idiot, is what he is.
Yeah, and that, you know, it's surprising how much he goes through and is still actually kicking at this point. Because I didn't really think about it, but like, man, he goes through a lot of shit in that game. He gets fucking beat up in the Coliseum, and he eats shitty food, and his ass explodes. But yeah, anyways, I think that there's so much room there for these characters, and to make them more fleshed out, and you know, I think it's something that we have repeated ad nauseum during this show. But I you know, hey, it's the reason that we do that is because it'd be really cool. But the thing another thing that I saw this and then I immediately thought of you, because I think you brought this up on a previous episode about, you know, the light and the dark world, and that he goes into this whole thing, which I know almost nothing.
The black live stream and the white live stream.
Yeah, that's I know pretty much nothing about Kingdom Hearts, so I can't really speak to any of this stuff. But I do remember you bringing up this theory, sort of like in jest, almost, of like, oh, maybe it could be this. And then I just thought it was funny that he also had that theory.
Well, no, I mean, it's not so much a Kingdom Hearts thing. It's in the novel On the Way to a Smile. It's talked about that there's basically live stream white, which is the normal live stream as they know it. All right. And then there's live stream black, which in the way it's translated is very closely related to, again, what Jessie's theory is about her dad. Jessie's theory about her dad is very similar to what the idea of live stream black is in the On the Way to a Smile novel. Mm.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you know, there's definitely like the way that there's so many different ways that it could go, and like I think it's a interesting idea, and you know, like of course I could make jokes of like of the very little that I know about Kingdom Hearts and be like, oh well, what if we're in the Digiverse, or well, it's not the Digiverse, but you know, aren't there digital copies of people in Kingdom Hearts? Am I making that up?
Digital? No. There's like data worlds.
Data world, yes, the database, in the database. For all the 10 people that will understand that reference. But he does. Peter goes into, you know, having all these crystals, like the crystals in Bugenhagen's planetarium, being the things that kind of, and he also kind of references Final Fantasy 3, which I don't know anything about Final Fantasy 3, so I will take his word at it. That the acquiring crystals. Basically, he's talking about acquiring crystals to defeat Sephiroth. Which, sure. I like I said, I don't know enough about the games that he's referencing here to really have much of an opinion on it, but it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't. Unless you have anything else to add there, Nick, I will. Maybe we should move along.
Yeah, I'm trying to just think. If there's anything else I would touch on with this whole thing. No, I think we've said everything we got to say.
Yeah.
I think it's a great theory. I like that he brought up a lot of different ideas that don't necessarily all need to be true.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily like this is this video was not necessarily it even says it in the title. It's like it's a wish list of things that he wants to see or he thinks that he would be cool, and also theories. So I like that it was a little bit of both,
Yeah.
Even though they're like the things that he was talking about at the end, where I was like, I don't have a frame of reference for this, but I appreciate your enthusiasm, Peter.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, we'll have links to the video there in the description of the YouTube video here. So if you would like to check him out and that video out, I highly recommend it, because I feel like I said at the very top of the episode, I was like, we're probably gonna butcher some of these just by spiraling off into our own tangents. But moving on to the next video that we're talking about is by a fellow named Subtext, and that's SubTXT on YouTube, and his video, What Will Happen to Zack in FF7 Rebirth? The Deep Ground Zack Theory. And boy, oh boy, when I saw that title, I was like, I don't, what does that mean? And I think it was something that immediately caught my attention, because Zack being alive is like the number one thing that a lot of people are sort of pointing at and being like, this you better make this worth it. You better fucking make this worth it, because
better make this
you
work.
Don't you bring this motherfucker back just to do some dumb fan service, and which Subtext does bring up in this video a couple of times. I mean, we won't. I think with this video, maybe not necessarily go beat for beat, because he does talk about some other stuff, and he does refer to other theory videos that we will probably skip over for now. Because we do want to explore the things that he is referencing in the future. So he does talk about like Sleep Easy's video. But I guess we'll get to the sort of the main theory here of like what is the deal with Zack. And I guess we could kind of maybe talk about the little bit of stuff that he's talking about beforehand about the whole thing with Cloud and his mental state, and like why are they showing that off so early and establishing that so early. And I feel like even like Sephiroth being in the first chapter, right, and having all that stuff there, and introducing this stuff way earlier than, I mean, I guess in OG they do sort of show that stuff a little tiny bit. Like when you're setting the bomb up in the first reactor, like there is that little moment of you don't really know what is happening.
Yeah, but they really play it up in the beginning now. Like, in the OG, Cloud wasn't having like specific image flashbacks of Aerith's death.
Right.
Which is something that he's having now that he wasn't having then.
Yeah, and I do like that. This is also kind of an aside, but something, because I didn't know about this. Because about obviously the whole theory is about like the two timeline theory and stuff like that. I didn't realize that if there were people started referring to the Zack being alive timeline, if that's what it is, as the Terrier timeline because of Stamp.
Yeah.
I didn't know about any of that. I mean, I knew, well,
see,
obviously,
I like subtext a lot because I'm with him, man. I've never really seen this as being a 2-timeline thing. I don't know.
And honestly,
that's where he got me paying attention. Right
away. I really do like his approach here, and again, like I said, I think we're kind of just going to generally talk about it here. But I again highly implore everyone to watch the original video, because I think we'll try to just kind of general speak about this very generally. But I do the whole approach of what is going on, like why did Sephiroth have to bring us here at the end of why did he have to bring us to the edge of not the edge of creation, the singularity, right? Like why instead of just fighting us here, like why did he have to go to a place outside of space and time in order to do any of this stuff? And he even says oh, was it to fight the Whispers? It's like, no, we been fighting the Whispers this whole time, technically.
Well, see, this was actually, that to me, actually, there's a little hole in that theory. We can't hurt the Whispers in reality. Every time we fought them, we just bounced off them.
Well,
so we went to the singularity because that's where we can actually impact fate, because that's where it actually lies. Fate didn't lie in the surface realm with us.
That is true.
It lied beyond the veil. So that's why Sephiroth.
And he brought us there, maybe, so that we could fight the Whispers and actually damage them, weaken them, so that he could absorb them.
Yes.
And it's funny because I never
we talked about I think we talked about this a little bit on one of the most recent podcasts. It's like what he did with the Whispers. That was his plan in OG, just with Meteor and the live stream.
Right. Yes, we did talk about that.
Crash into the fucking planet so that he could sit there at the center and absorb that live stream and all that power. Sort of the same idea. He just kind of readjusted it and said, no, we don't need Meteor yet. Let's first do this same idea here, and I'll absorb fate. Right.
And yeah, as subtext goes on to explain that us killing fate, basically instead of creating two timelines, basically rewrites the timeline. Remakes the timeline. Exactly. Double meaning.
Yeah, this is where he got me.
Yeah, and I was just like, that to me, because I, as I've said on previous episodes here, I was a pretty firm believer of the two timeline theory, because I was like, there's no way that they could possibly...
It's an easy way to make sense of it.
Right, yeah, it's like, how can Zack be, and I think the whole idea of, because we still don't, the only thing that's still fuzzy at this point is, where, is Zack still in the past, or,
This was another little, and maybe I have this wrong, but this was another little hole I had in his theory, is where he's like, okay, so we know Zack goes back to Midgar. Mm-hmm. Where would he go next? The church. He wears the church, and Aerith's not there because she's out on the adventure. I'm like, hold on.
Yeah.
But if he's bringing Cloud back to Midgar with him, then Aerith hasn't left yet. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm misrepresenting the theory. He said she would be up in Shinra Tower.
Right, because if...
he would go to Elmira.
Right, but the thing is then that because at the end of Crisis Core, I'm not entirely sure, is it ever mentioned how much time passes between the end of Crisis Core to where we would be at in terms of the original timeline? You know what I mean? In the original game, I
think we could figure that out.
I feel like
that's something that could definitely be figured out. But
because we know.
I feel
it was 5 years, right? Because when Cloud...
5 years from the Nibelheim incident to the first day.
Oh, and yeah, but the thing is that we also don't know is how long Zack and Cloud were out, when they were being experimented on by Hojo. Which is the thing, because they... the Nibelheim incident happened, and then Hojo took them in and was, experimenting with them, and then they broke out of there, and then, shortly after that is when Zack's last stand happened. So, and I don't think, as from whenever that point was to now, was not, like, it was only maybe a couple of days, like, between them escaping from Shinra and him doing his final stand. So I or at least it seems like it was maybe only like a day or two, maybe at most. But because the thing that, because it's so messy, like, and not talking about subtext video, I'm talking about just the way that they have laid out all this information for us, is that because that scene with Zack at the end of intermission, when he goes to the church, and we're all thinking like, well, okay, everyone is in the church weeping and crying, and if because if it is the same yeah, no, I'm trying to think of this actively in real time, and
this is where again, this one random YouTube commenter on one of my videos sent me down a rabbit hole where I'm like, this is where that whole livestream black thing kind of makes sense. What if all these people are mourning because they're just trapped? They're trapped in this little limbo. Maybe Jesse's dad is in the church.
Maybe. But I'm thinking because, like, if it
is... I wonder if anyone's actually tried to find him in there.
Like, if it is a... like what subtext is saying here, of the timeline being rewritten. Because we had... something that we had brought up on an episode, because I remember talking about it, was... us coming, never mind. The party coming out of the singularity.
That happens to me about once a day, by the way. That happens to me about once a day.
Yeah, that I absolutely I feel that. But yeah, like the because when the party is in the singularity, right? They are outside of space and time.
Correct.
What if when they came back out, if it was... but now that doesn't make any sense, because Sector 7 is still destroyed.
Cloud is what keeps things from making sense. The fact he's going back to Midgar with
Cloud. Yeah, because like where does he put Cloud?
Everyone's theory is off. Everyone's theory gets thrown off there. That's where people go, oh, well, this maybe only makes sense if there's two clouds, two timelines, which logically I see how people could reach that, but I think that's too low-hanging a fruit, is A. B, Final Fantasy has seldom, if ever, done separate timeline shit. B, they would be silly to make Final Fantasy VII more complex than Kingdom Hearts.
Because the thing that...
Kingdom Hearts has one timeline, and if that's going to be your flagship convoluted title, you can't go and make FF7 even more convoluted than that.
Right. The only thing that I'm thinking of right now, just off the top of my head, of how they could sort of skirt around that, is if, Zack is bringing Cloud back to Midgar, right? And while that is well, no, because we see him, unless that was more of just like a visual metaphor or whatever, of them, because I was thinking, oh, maybe like once, like that, Zack bringing Cloud back to Midgar was happening while we were in the singularity, and then that Cloud that he's bringing back, once the real quote-unquote Cloud comes back into reality, that other Cloud just doesn't exist anymore, right?
Yeah.
But as we see at the very end of Remake, they cross paths, as insinuating that is happening at the same time, which is the thing that bugs me the most, is that the time, like, we don't know. Time is the most unknown element here, because if subtext theory here is that it has been rewritten, like, yes, obviously, like, space and time and things like that are very weird, and even Peter Bytes had a bit in his last video that is like, multiversal stories can very easily fall to shit very fast. So that's why I'm kind of more willing to latch on to the rewriting the one timeline theory.
The grandfather paradox,
right,
and loops back on itself,
right, and that's something, like, after watching subtext video, kind of made me lean more towards that direction. But yeah, because then the the whole thing of like the timing, because another thing that subtext goes into in this video a lot is like trying to work out the justifications for if Zack is existing in the same timeline that everyone else is as they're going to calm, right? Yeah. What is going to spur him to be on that same path as them? Because, you know, if you think about it, like if Zack, you know, if we're going to be seeing Zack here and he is in the world as it was, right? Or as it is now, you know, what does he have? You know, like Angeal's gone. Genesis is quote unquote gone. Sephiroth is gone. You know, it's like he doesn't have, well, he does have Gongaga, and he does have Cisne still, but and he does bring up that, like, you know, theoretically they could, you know, meet up with him in Gongaga, because if you think, like, if he goes to, you know, goes back to Midgar, he goes to the Sector 5 church, and then it sees, oh, Aerith isn't here. Okay, well, yeah, go see Elmira, and Elmira be like, oh, she's in Shinra Tower, because that's where Elmira thinks that she is, because that's where the party was leaving to go to save her, right? And then he goes there and finds that she's not there, and he's that Aerith isn't there, that President Shinra is dead, and all this other stuff, and like there's this big mulleted weirdo walking around, talking about Cloud's big sword, and I just thought I never considered this option, but what if Zack runs into Roche at some point, and how would that go? He's like, Jesus. You've got a big sword too. Oh man, that'd be really cool. But you know, then if you think about it, because then, you know, if Zack is, yeah, and the kind of how we were talking about before, like the whole idea of we don't know what the aftermath of like what the actual ramifications of killing Fate has done. Like we see these little things like Zack being alive and Biggs being alive and things like that, but we really don't know, like, and then we see, you know, Zack going into the church, but even then, that is the tiniest little window into what is going on, and we don't know how much time has passed. And we're assuming that, you know, he gets back to Midgar with Cloud, he, like, drops him off somewhere, and then is immediately like, all right, I gotta go see Aerith, right? Mm-hmm. And then, you know, presumably all this other stuff that we're talking about and that subtext talks about is all happening, you know, relatively quickly, and that, you know, eventually trying to get a piece of all this and, you know, figure out what the hell's going on. I'm just, the whole aspect of, like, we just don't know timeline wise, where does this all fit? You know, mm-hmm. And like if it is now we have rewritten the timeline, like how can there be two Clouds? Unless, like I said, unless somehow that they are, maybe we'll pull some sort of trickery and be like, well, they didn't actually cross paths, as they, you know, were like as the party was leaving Midgar and he's coming back to Midgar, and that was just more of like a, you know, artistic expression of like a you know, a really cool ass moment as it was, and nothing more, which, I mean, I wouldn't be too thrilled about that, but at the same time it also would help explain a lot of stuff that we are currently confused about right now. So I wonder, because yeah, I guess before I railed off onto all that other stuff, him going to Gongaga after finding out that, like, you know, because I'm assuming that, like, if he went back to Shinra Tower, people are not just gonna be like, oh, hey, what's up, man, haven't seen you all, because, you know, he was wanted by Shinra, so maybe, you know, he wouldn't necessarily, even though he does talk about him going back to Shinra Tower, I'm like, would Zack even do that? You know, like, I mean, the fact that he's even going back to Midgar is kind of crazy, right? Because like in Zack's eyes, like he just, he was on the run from Shinra, and he just killed a whole bunch of their troops and stuff, and is like, yeah, let me just go walking right back into the line.
Well, he's got to see Aerith. Like that's the whole thing.
Yeah, and then maybe once, maybe he doesn't go to Shinra Tower in the end. Maybe he will, he after Aerith, or
he might have the capacity to know, like, well, that'll be a bad idea.
Right, and I mean, and
so maybe he sets something up. Maybe he starts working in the shadows.
Yeah, I mean, Kunsel. Maybe Kunsel will. That is a good reason to make Kunsel come back, and would be a good reason to name drop him in remake. Because I mean, if you think about it, like if he does go to Elmira's house, and she's like, oh, she's in Shinra Tower, he's like, well, okay, I got to go there and kick ass, I guess. And then maybe he will do that, and then maybe run into Kunsel or something and be like, hey man, I don't know how you're still alive, but shit's kind of crazy right now. Maybe you should leave. And he's like, oh, where am I going to go? Well, you? Gongaga. I kind of hope that they do that bit again. Because like I feel like it's such a meme at this point. I feel like they have to.
They're pretty in touch with their fans, so.
But
I'll give them the benefit of the doubt.
I think that theoretically he could go to Gongaga and then he could meet the rest of the party there. But it does feel a bit convenient, I guess, in a lot of ways.
Right.
And I think he even Subtext even brings that up. It's like it seems a little convenient for that to occur in that way, and I would think so. But because I'm thinking about it, and if Zack is going to meet up with the party at some point, it has to be done in a way that makes actual sense, instead of just being like, hey guys, what's up? And he even does a bit here where like once Cloud gets lost to the live stream or whatever, and then that would theoretically probably be the best point for him to join the party, and for having if Aerith is alive at this point, and having explaining to everyone like, hey guys, he's my ex-boyfriend, and has the same moveset as Cloud, so and then like that not being a good enough justification for that. And I was like, that totally makes sense to me. But to go a little bit more into the him going to Shinra Tower, because I kind of like skipped over that a little bit. He does, because the whole thing of this being the deep ground Zack theory of him getting involved, like I honestly kind of like the idea more that Zack is going to he will eventually become, like, he will eventually intersect with people somehow, but through he will have a completely different story, basically. And we'll still, like, we'll see Zack, and he'll be part of stuff, and he'll be doing things. It just may not necessarily be pertinent to, like, the main story, maybe until later on. But like going to Shinra Tower, and we were talking about Deep Ground and all that stuff, and how like that could be like, because is Sephiroth gonna even care about Zack, really? In this, I mean, I'm sure obviously he's be like, that's probably not a good idea. It's probably not a good thing that he's alive now, but I'm too busy trying to split Cloud's brain in half, and do I really need to do that? And then it does beg the question, is like, okay, well then he can go to Shinra Tower maybe and deal with Genesis, maybe, if he's there. And I feel like Genesis, like we were talking about, how Genesis is Zack's Sephiroth in a lot of ways, or he kind of ends up being that towards the end, and is more of, because like obviously Sephiroth and Zack are pretty close, right? Like, they're not like, the dynamic between Zack and Sephiroth, I obviously feel like is not the same as the one between Cloud and Sephiroth. And being that Sephiroth is sort of now being like this big bad, in everything, and that he's doing this crazy fucked up shit. I think maybe somehow, I mean, how does Zack even find out about any of that stuff is the only thing. Because if he's disconnected from all the other stuff that's going on, he's not just going to stumble across somebody and be like, hey, so, I mean, unless he met up with the party, or I think subtext brings up them, if he does meet up with Cloud, maybe they meet up somewhere and they exchange information, on all the stuff that they've learned throughout their respective journeys, right? And, like, that could be a, I think that could be a pretty decent way. And that's why I kind of was thinking, like, all right, I think that I like the idea more that Zack is going to have his own story of, his, like, this is, the continuation of Zack's story in this new world, right? And that he's going to go down this other path that I think ultimately will culminate in him joining the big fight at the end, right? And I think I had said something similar to that when we did our first, like, Rebirth podcast, and that I think that, because I was still sort of flying with the idea that there were two separate timelines, right? And that they were eventually going to converge at some point, probably before the big fight at the end, and that was going to be the thing. But if it is one timeline, that still theoretically can happen, because, like, Zack is going to be completely disconnected, because, like, there are definitely points where he can meet up with the party, right? But I don't think it's going to be something where he's just going to be there. He's just going to be like, hey guys, what's up? I'm also here. I think it's going to be, he will have a little, like, maybe Rebirth will focus maybe a bit more on Zack, right? Maybe we'll, as, Cloud and stuff, maybe, like, I think I could see it being like a split protagonist sort of game, right? Where it's like we're playing as Cloud and the rest of the party, and then we're also, like, switching between him and Zack and whatever his party may be, right? Which I would love if included Cisne.
I mean, we've talked about the whole, like, sort of dual party idea before.
Right, yeah.
And it's a good way to make sure no one gets left out. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like something that I could definitely agree with subtext here is something that I hope that does not happen, is that he comes in when Aerith, like, to save Aerith as she's about to get killed. I would not like that. Not in a little bit. Not in the slightest bit, I don't think. I mean, would it be, like, cool fan service? Absolutely. But in terms of, like, because, sort of the mission statement here that we were saying, and that subtext was also saying, is, like, to a certain degree at least, like, if you're gonna bring Zack back, it better fucking mean something. Instead of just it being an excuse for having this fan favorite character come back and have more stuff to do. I could
not agree more.
Right? Like, that's something that I think that we can all agree with. And I think really, I just hope that they don't screw it up, because it seems like something, like, the more I think about it, and the more, like, I watch subtext video and I think about it, and I'm like, man, there are so many points of like, where this could crumble apart into something that is, like, not what we think it's going to be at all, I mean, I do trust in the process, but there are definitely a lot of points of structural integrity in this plot, that of potential structural integrity that could be very weak, and I'm just trying to think, like, where else could he go? Like, what else could bring Zack together? I mean, subtext does bring up a couple other ideas. He talked about the Bugenhagen and all this other stuff, and I think and also that like once Cloud does the whole reunion stuff, that's when he'll jump in, and I think that is a bit better of a thing of like, okay, you have a character here that will probably function similarly to Cloud and is maybe a good, that would be a good point to have that, and then maybe maybe Cloud falls to the live stream and does all that stuff maybe halfway through Rebirth, maybe, and then we could play the other half as Zack and do like a I'm immediately regretting saying this, but like do like a Last of Us Part 2 situation where we go forward as Cloud, or we go because it's Last of Us 2 has I hate that because my biggest problem with that game was the pacing and the weird like what's the staggered storytelling that they were doing in that, where it was like we're going forward in time with one character and then we're catching up to where everything is at, because like I guess technically we could do that, like we could continue forward with Cloud and the rest of the party up until the point where that stuff happens, and then we can go back and be like, all right, well now we see Zack's how he got to where and then but then that would mean that would probably be that he would show up around like the City of the Ancients and stuff, which I'm not which goes exactly against what I was saying of like I don't want him to show up when Aerith is supposed to die and then he comes in and is like, ha-ha! We see another Buster Sword fly in from we see a second Buster Sword fly in from the darkness, and then he he does like it goes like around like a boomerang and then comes back, and then the Avengers theme starts playing, and then Zack comes in with Cisne and Kunsel and the Turks, which something that I guess I don't think Subtext really picked up on or really talked about in this video, and it's like, if Zack came back, that would I feel like the Turks would have feel a certain way about that.
Yep.
Because they were, Cisne obviously was not down with it, and I feel like because I feel like ever since we have covered all this other stuff, and like, man, Sung is like such a complex character now. I really don't know what he would do. If like he would he still stick to his I'm gonna be a shitheel, or would he revert back to the cinnamon bun version of himself, because
the leader of the Turks himself.
Yeah, because like I'm trying to remember, because in that that Last Order OVA, he's the one that calls like the order to pursue Zack, right? And he's like kind of reluctantly doing it. I feel like I remember seeing a scene like that where he's like talking on a phone and he's like, yes, I will do that. I might have to go back and watch that Last Order OVA. And hey, if you listening, you've not seen it, you should.
It's a good watch. It was
pretty
watch.
Fun. It wasn't not like a lot of new information per se, but it was an interesting take on that little bit of events that we didn't. We saw a little bit in Crisis Core, but not really. It's like supplementary material, but like not really, because we don't learn any new information necessarily. But we do see the other Turks there from before Crisis that show like they show up and they're just like, hey, we're standing here and we're cool. And then I think the Last Order came out right before or right around before Crisis, right? Because I think that was sort of like a precursor to it, or maybe it was right after. But yeah, if they're, because I feel like if they do the thing where they like Zack is the secondary protagonist in Rebirth, like that opens up so many things of that what we were talking about, of they could bring back so many these other characters and have like an actual sort of a better reason to bring back some of these characters. Like, you know, if the other Turks like had shown up, you know, and just been like, hey guys, we're also here. You know, I feel like if it wasn't related to, you know, if it was just like in the regular plot, like, I mean, it would be cool, but it would also feel kind of weird. But, you know, if we bring Zach back in and, you know, we bring Cisne back in and, you know, he interacts with the other Turks and stuff, and that, you know, I just feel like that opens up that whole sort of Turk side of things that I was very excited about to not get in, to eventually not get in Before Crisis. But, you know, could be a way for them to bring all those characters back in a way that would, I feel like, flow a lot better narratively than just, you know, having them be there, you know? But yeah, I mean, I as far as subtext video here, like I said, I didn't really want to go too in depth because I do want the listeners at home to go watch the video, and he also does he kind of ends his video with stuff that Maximilian says, and that we do want to eventually cover Maximilian's videos and stuff and that he's done and his theories and things like that. In a separate episode. So, yeah, I mean, go watch subtext video. I mean, I at this point don't know what else. I don't know is there anything that you want to add, Nick, to any of the stuff that we've been talking about?
I guess, you know, I think it's subtext, but I think both of them brought up like what's really fun is the idea that we could throw all these ideas out and it's hard to confirm or deny any of them.
Yeah, and that's
like we really have left it in.
Yeah, that we're in that sweet spot where it's like there's so little information, but like so many clues and like hints at stuff that it's like all this stuff is very plausible, but could immediately just like, you know, like as soon as we know what is actually going on, like I feel like like that, like there's so many different possibilities until the eventual one that we get, right? And that's like the fun part of all this theory crafting and stuff, and that's, you know, what, you know, got me roaring in the last episode of like, yeah, like this is, you know, the anticipation of all the stuff that could potentially happen. I think is really exciting. And is kind of the best part of stuff. And then I just hope it doesn't get to a point where we're like, oh man, we have like these crazy expectations, and then it ends up being something a little bit more I don't want to say mid, but, you know, have it be like not necessarily underwhelming, but like have it be like, oh, well, okay, I guess you could do it that way too, you know? Like there's something to just be like, you know, because that, you know, before Remake came out, it's like we didn't know much. I mean, we knew that it was going to be basically close to what we know, but like slightly different. But now that meter has been turned up all the fucking way, where it's like I don't know. Like they keep telling me that things are going to be the same story-wise, but then have all this other crazy shit happen, and I'm like, I feel like you're lying to me. I feel like you guys are lying to us and trying to, I don't know, maybe, or who knows, maybe they're trying to keep our expectations in check and, you know, have it be like, well, don't, you know, even though it seems like we're absolutely going batshit insane, it's not going to be as insane as we may think that it is, you know, even though, you know, they say that, and then, you know, because didn't one of the devs say that like Rebirth is also going to be like follow similar story beats to the original?
Kitase. I believe Kitase came out and said
that. Like they say that, but then, you know, oh, but Zach's alive. So like it creates this weird scenario where it's like, okay, well, they're telling us that the story is going to stay, and the story and the locations that you go to are going to be relatively the same. But then there's all this other shit that we're just going to not talk about and be super coy about and drive, you know, podcasters two podcasters insane about, and many people all over the internet, obviously. But we're in such a weird scenario right now where it's like they're playing it so close to the chest, but are also sort of playing it off like, oh no, it's gonna be, don't worry, it's gonna be the same, it's gonna be close. But you can also play this game without playing the previous one, and like, what does that fucking mean? what does any of this mean? And that's the part that's like, it's so. I have so much fun with like these theories and thinking about stuff, where this stuff's gonna go, and then I just get to a point of frustration where I'm just like, well, I don't have any more information to go off of. So you hit, it's like there's so many different paths you can go down to, but they all end with a massive brick wall, and you're just like, oh, okay, like, all right, I guess I'll go back to the start and then go somewhere else and get really excited as I'm running down this path. Oh, here's another. Oh, that's what it feels like. But I mean, it's still exciting nonetheless. But yeah, I guess we're probably just gonna wrap it up here. I think, unless, do you have anything else that you wanted to bring up there, Nick?
Yeah. The only other thing, I guess, that I would bring up. Actually, no. Let me think about this. Because I touched on it a little bit before. I'm trying to think of what I may not have. I guess all I would say is, I think the best way that Zack could be included is with a 2-party system. I don't know by what way you achieve that, but we already have the problem of how you're going to play as every character. Are you going to end up having characters ride the bench? Whereas if you're going to include Zack, he could be a good way to split the party up.
Yeah, and
maybe instead that, we talked about the whole Zack Deep Ground theory is, maybe he's down there at Deep Ground with characters like Yuffie and Vincent that have a beef with Deep Ground. Who are originally optional. Considering that Yuffie and Vincent were optional, it would be easy to leave them out. Not necessarily leave them out, but it would be easy to omit them from the main journey, and because you pile them on with Zack.
Subtext does, bring up like that. If he goes and deals with Deep Ground, he's probably going to have to deal with Sonon. Up at that who is under Deep Ground's control.
And then imagine you have a party of Zack, Sonon, Yuffie, and Vincent.
Ooh.
And Kate Sith, because now that can connect
and then,
to Shinra.
Oh my God!
And now you have 2 parties.
God. So
now you got 2 parties. You're always bleeding with the Buster Sword, no matter what.
Yeah,
so the game always feels like the game. Yeah.
So you have the OG party that's following the somewhat same path, and then you have the compilation party, basically, that is doing all doing all the the tie-up stuff between Crisis Core and Dirge. Man, I think you might have cracked it, Nick. I think you might.
Maybe.
I think you might have cracked it, and then I think that there could possibly be crossover and stuff, like certain party members are in different places or something, or they go somewhere else, and we can swap them out maybe at some point, or maybe that'll be more like a third game thing where we can sort of have like a we can swap people out and stuff. And and Subtext also did bring up having like having Zack can control another party when we're fighting the weapons or something, or something like that, where you can have this sort of like they're together but you don't like control them at the same time, like you're like, oh, Zack's gonna be team B and Cloud's team A or something, you know what I mean? And like that opens up a lot of possibilities too, but I think that is definitely more of like a third game thing. To me, at least, like because I'm assuming like the third game is probably just going to be batshit insane, and there's going to be a lot of shit happening, and I think that maybe that's when they'll fully, lift off the veil and be like, aha, it was going to be batshit crazy all along, and we were just still trying to fool you into thinking that it was going to be just the same old Final Fantasy VII, but but man, I really like that Zack is the leader of the compilation party. that we have the OG party that goes, along the same path, and then Zack has the compilation party, and that they deal with the deep ground stuff and all like Genesis and all that stuff. Ooh, that feels real good. that one feels real good. But yeah, shit. Well, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you brought that up, because I didn't even really think about that possibility necessarily, because I was thinking about the two protagonist the two-party system of Final Fantasy VII, and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, Zack could, maybe Cissnei would come back and fight, right? And she could be but then she uses the same weapon as Yuffie, so I don't know how practical that would be if they were both in the party at the same time. But maybe if Cissnei doesn't, or maybe she comes back for a little bit and, doesn't die, hopefully. That would be nice. And maybe, because another thing that Peter Bites had brought up is that, he thinks that maybe potentially when we go back, like, on the siege on Midgar, that, like, people, like, that's when characters are going to die. Like, that's when we're going to see, like, and that's what I think, like, that's going to be, like, the third game. And, like, the whole thing of, we're going to actually see the ramifications of killing Fate and, like, character. I think that may be when they start doing, like, big character deaths and things like that. If they do them, which I'm of two ways about, because they originally they wanted there to be more character deaths in FF7, but thought it was too much, so they just kept it to Aerith.
Nojima and Kitase wanted to kill everybody off, but Nomura was like, make it just Aerith and it'll punctuate it more.
So, I mean, if Aerith does survive, the point where she dies in OG, I feel like maybe that would be the time, during like the big, we're doing the big, final sort of we're starting to wrap everything else up and have the big return to Midgar and all this stuff. Maybe that's, I don't know. Might have to stew on that one a bit more and iron it out a bit, but, I think I am prepared for sad shit to happen in Rebirth, and I don't think I don't know. I'm still kind of caught up on what is Rebirth's cliffhanger gonna be, right? I mean, that I feel like is almost impossible to guess at this point, because we don't know.
I think Max has nailed it. I think Max has nailed it. It ends with Cloud kind of lose, like, the party being separated, Cloud kind of fucking losing his mind. Yeah, and like that. And
I sort of alluded to it before, but I will just bring up a little detail of Ray Kaufman had a video where the final boss of Rebirth is going to be Reunion Cloud, and I'm like, that's really fucking good. Where we have to fight, Reunion Cloud at the end and have that be the big thing. And hey, that would be that could be an interesting point if Zack came back in, and maybe seeing Zack in the flesh causes him to really sort of, lose it and become fully under Sephiroth's, control, I guess, right? And, yeah, then maybe the third game would be, like, saving Cloud, and having him, getting him back from all that stuff and being like, hey, you're only, like, mostly mentally traumatized, but we'll bring you back to an acceptable level of mental trauma. But I don't know. I think we'll get there, and we'll do more exploring in the field of theories here, and we'll probably reconvene and talk about these things again in the future and build upon them. And I guess it's also worth mentioning that these videos that we talked about today were they came out, I think they both came out in June of this year, 2022. Yes. almost on the same day even, which I think that was, you know, that makes a lot of sense. But I guess I'm rambling on at this point. I think I've ran out of things to say other than, yeah, go watch Peter Bites and Subtext's videos. That there will be links to. Could we put links to it in the just the podcast description? I guess I don't know if that even works.
Yeah. We'll have all their information in the description.
Yeah, we'll have stuff there. It'll be on YouTube and all that stuff there as well for ease of access. But yeah, I guess. Was there anything else you wanted to bring up, Nick, or you?
No, I would just
reiterate. Any other bangers you got in your back pocket?
Yeah. No, I would reiterate that, you know, check out these creators, subscribe to their YouTube channels. I think some of the best theories on YouTube come from channels no one's ever heard of. So
yes.
That's what I would say.
Show them love, and you know, if you go check them out, tell them the Midgar Minute sent you. I guess I don't know. But yeah, with that being said, do you want to count us down this time, Nick?
I would love to. Are you ready for it?
I am always ready.
All right, let's do this. 3, 2, 1.
Yeah, baby.
Got it.